I want to call to order the meeting of the D.C. Commission, Host Commission on the anniversary of the March on Washington, the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington. This is the committee which was appointed by the Mayor of the District of Columbia, Mayor Vincent Gray, to host the hordes of thousands who are coming in from out of town to remember this march and what it stood for, and also to organize the local people, to put D.C. on the move, to get this city on the move, so that we can have a great turnout in the District of Columbia. And I noticed somebody out there already violated the rule. Because this is an official meeting of the commission, I'm going to ask the Secretary of the District of Columbia, Cynthia Brock Smith, to call the roll of the commissioners. So first of all, you'll know who they are, and also they will be recognized for this purpose. So I'm going to pass the mic now down to Cynthia Brock Smith, and she's going to call the roll.
Fred Allen.
Present.
Wiley Chin. Cortland Cox. Franklin Garcia.
I'm here on behalf of this Latino caucus from
Chuck Hicks.
Here.
William Lucy. Dr. Frank Smith.
Here.
Judith Terra.
Here.
Dr. Ife Williams.
Present.
Reverend Reginald Green.
Present.
John Franklin.
Present.
Linda Kropp. Jerry Clark.
He's in the back.
Jerry Clark is present. Bernard Dimchuk. Elliot Ferguson. James Early. Joe Madison. Gustavo Velasquez. Paul Quander. Phil Mendelson. Marion Barry. Sterling Tucker. And Dr. Joyce Ladner. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
My name wasn't called.
Frank Wiles. Thank you, Frank. Okay, now we have here's our format for today. The people at this table are members of the commission and the host committee who will be hearing the testimony of the witnesses who are sitting at the table here. I'm going to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves. When we organized this committee in the beginning, we put Reverend Reginald Green, who's on my left here, in charge of this commission, and he and Reverend Coleman have been the main two people who are organizing this here today. And of course, so I'm going to call them in that order. They'll be followed also by Reverend Abrigo, who is the local president of the National Action Network. He's going to, I'm going to recognize them for opening comments of 3 minutes. And then after they finish their opening comments of 3 minutes, we're going to start with our witness table. We understand that Terry Lynch has to leave early, so we'll let him go first, and then after him. Okay. Well, we're going to go. Lovenstein is first, so we're going to go with him. He has to leave also, but we want to give them an opportunity to say a few words. We also are asking them to report on what they're doing in their congregations to try to help get people out. But before we go to our witnesses, let me start with Reverend Reginald Green, who is going to give us an opening comment. Reverend Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To all of you gathered here today, let me express, first of all, my thanks for your interest and your commitment to the ongoing evolution of citizenry in a way that makes sense in America. I'm going to thank you particularly because we're at a kind of transition, crossroads in our nation right now. And it's important that we reflect on what went on in 1963. However, we must see this as an ongoing kind of process based on all that we see going on in the nation today. So I've been very honored and pleased to be a part of this commission, and I want to thank the mayor for asking me to serve. I'm interested in the participation, obviously, of the faith-based community because, as you know, in 1963, that was largely a part of the citizenry that was involved in the March on Washington. So I'm going to thank you for coming, and I'll have some later comments later.
Thank you, thank you. Reverend Coleman?
Thank you. It's our delight to be able to share with you in brother and sisterhood. The purpose of my participation is to assist Dr. Green and Dr. Smith and all of you. My real concern is that there is a tie between the church and civil rights, social justice. We have had kind of a malaise in our mental thoughts about movements, but there has been so many things going on to excite our psychic that it is time for us to move the spirit that is rather seemingly dormant, but we got to wake up our spirit and engender the spirit that the 1964 march had. We're not trying to revive that spirit, we're trying to live that spirit. And we're asking all of you, all churches, we're asking churches to have a thematic on social justice, preach it, have the prophetic word go forth to wake people conscious. We've been asleep and things are happening that we can see that with a lot of examples that we'll perhaps talk about later, from Trayvon Martin to taking away financial aid to a host of issues that are going on. So I look forward to have further dialogue.
Reverend Brigo?
Good morning. Reverend Sharpton has given us specific instructions for this march because he and Martin III have a clear idea of what this march is all about. And fortunately for me, my work is going to be a lot easier today because the chairman of our board, Dr. Richardson, is here. We are so thankful that he made the sacrifice to be here, the pastor of Grace Baptist Church in Mount Vernon, New York. And so the nexus that we see between the church and civil and human rights is that most civilians belong to the faith community, most civilians in America. This country started with strong connections to faith. And so our founders were people of faith, men of faith, and so civilians are people of faith. So that when you talk about civil rights, you're basically talking about the rights of church members, or synagogue members, or members of a mosque, or whatever religion people subscribe to which people subscribe and are disciples. Then human rights, to me, is a redundancy, because human beings have certain natural rights. It's stated in the Constitution. Those rights are inalienable, to mean that they cannot be transferred. So we didn't get them from anyone. So it seems like an automatic emphasis and a natural emphasis to put a focus on civil rights. And so the church has a significant role in that, because like I said, most people belong to the faith community. So for National Action Network in DC, we are mobilizing clergy, and we have a clergy meeting every Tuesday at the Shiloh Baptist Church at 1 p.m. We're going to merge that meeting today here because Dr. Richardson is here, and we'd like to have him talk to all clergy who are in the room. So we're going to ask the clergy after the press conference, clergy who are present, to remain, and Dr. Richardson will address us with some more specifics. National Action Network has produced with Martin King III 9 talking points, and we will go over that either here or in Dr. Richardson's address. Thank you very much.
Would just like to say hello to everybody. First of all, my friend Dick Gregory always says that the two most important forces in the black community are the black woman and the black church. Obviously, the black woman is very powerful because they needed fewer of us here today to urge people to be here on August 24th and for the rest of the events. The reason there aren't more here today, of course, has nothing to do with the chairman or the mayor, but it's just that women are accustomed to being out doing and acting rather than meeting and talking. So you can be sure that women are out working to get people here. We're out working to get people here on the 24th, and I'm delighted to be both on the national committee as well as the mayor's local committee, so you know that, as usual, as a woman, as other women are doing, I'll be doing double time.
Okay. Now we're going to go to our witnesses, and we're going to follow the list as it is appears before us. We're going to start with Dr. Clark Lobenstein, Executive Director of Interfaith Conference. He'll be followed by Reverend Franklin Richardson, and he'll be followed by Terry Lynch, Executive Director of Downtown Cluster, and then Pastor Ronald Braxton, the pastor of Metropolitan AME Church, and then Dr. Lewis Anthony. Okay, so we'll go in that order.
Thank you, both to those who are present from the commission and to those who are present in the audience. I am Reverend Dr. Clark Lobenstein, the Executive Director of the Interfaith Conference, and I was at the March on Washington 50 years ago and look forward to the participation in the March on Washington in various forms, August 21st to 28th of 2013. The work ahead of us is certainly important. The work that has already taken place in 20 years of annual interfaith services, multi-religious services for Dr. King's birthday that we coordinate, that brings together a broad coalition of people, and our treasurer is here. That work is a part of the bigger work that needs to take place here. The Interfaith Conference looks forward to the opportunity to participate in this service and to bring together our 11 faith community members behind a Zoroastrian in this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson. I'm senior pastor of Grace Church in New York. And I serve as the chairman of the board of the National Action Network and chairman of the board of the Conference of National Black Churches. And I came this morning, first of all, to thank the local committee and the commission for hosting our people here in this city. It's very important that the local community provides the leadership and direction for this national march. And I want to thank you on behalf of Reverend Sharpton, the National Action Network, the board, Martin Luther King III. We want to thank you for your being here to help us. I'm also encouraged by our chapter president here. This march began, this preparation for this march began back in April, and prior to that, Reverend Sharpton and Martin Luther King III and the National Action Network began to and then reached out to all of the other civil rights organizations who have become a part, and the church denominations. I'm happy to tell you that all the national denominations of the African American church are on board. And we are in contact with all the bishops and the presidents of the denominations. Even last night, we had a call with about 150 on the call last night. And we've had calls every week, mobilizing the church community across America to make sure. As a matter of fact, we registered 1,000 buses yesterday at RFK Stadium. We have to pay $55 for every space, for every bus. And they can register through our national office, through the website. So we are expecting, our goal is to equal the numbers of the march in 1963, 250,000 people. We want to mobilize as many people. We think that every person who marched in 1963 ought to have a witness in 2013. The witness list ought not have gotten smaller because the problem hasn't gotten any smaller. The challenges continue to be in our community, continue to keep us from realizing the full opportunities. So yes, indeed, this is not a celebration. This is not even a commemoration. This is a continuation of seeking the dream to be actualized and realized in our communities and so we pick up the mantle and we keep going forward. And so I want you to know that we are prepared. We are working every day. Reverend Sharpton, myself, we've been in cities having church rallies across America. Today, he will have a rally tonight in Richmond, Virginia, with the mayor of Richmond who's hosting it, who's a pastor. And there'll be, I'm going back to New York for the night for a meeting for this. So we're not letting go. We're staying vigilant. We need all the help. There's no room in our community for this march for any division. There's no room for ego to get in the way of us doing what needs to be done for our people, because we inherited so much. The march is bigger, yes, this time than before, because last time there was only one woman involved. This time there'll be multiple women speaking and engaged in this movement. We will also, in this march, be broad-based in trying to speak to the justice issues for all people. The world has gotten big, and the march in '63 and the civil rights movement set the ground for a contagious movement across the world. The world has not been the same. Apartheid was caught in that spirit. The wall dropping in Berlin was caught in that spirit, and it continues. Even in Egypt today and all over the world, people are recognizing that freedom is an important agenda, and the most important agenda. And so I want you to know that we appreciate you. We need everyone we can. Last night, we raised about $150,000. We have a $1 million bill. The National Action Network has a $1 million bill, because everything that's on the mall we have to pay for. The government doesn't give us anything. We have to pay every single step of the way. Security, sound. We start on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock with an ecumenical service. We believe that the ground needs to be prepared with prayer. And the church community from 8 to 9:30 will be setting the stage with a prayer vigil. Pastors, the dominant interfaith community, will be engaged in a prayer from an hour and a half leading up right to the continuation of the rally that will close at 12:15, and then we will march from Lincoln Memorial to the King Memorial, King Monument. And we hope to be concluded by 2 o'clock. That's where we are. It's a lot of groundwork going on. National Action Network has 67 chapters that are engaging people across the country. NAACP has been in dialogue. And then there are other, as you know, the march is not the only thing. Many of the other civil rights organizations have other activities that will continue throughout Tuesday. Some start as early as Wednesday. So there are activities around this, but the march is becoming most pivotal because it will be the last thing. Now let me finally say that the march is not the destination. The march is simply an action on the way to the destination. The destination, we've got to follow up when the march is over. It's not enough to have a big party here in Washington and then go home and things go back to the state. We've got to use the march as a launching pad to address the inequities in American society, the laws that keep us down, the Voter Act, voter suppression that is continuing in this country. The whole 32 states have now signed on since the Supreme Court. Trayvon, stand your ground. While they're standing their ground, we're losing ground. So we've got to, there's a lot that has to be done, and we've got to seek to do legislative change, policy change. The value of 1963 was 64, the Voter Rights Act. And hopefully the value of 2013 will be the changes that we make in the laws and the policies that oppress people and keep people down. So again, thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I am Ronald Braxton, the senior pastor at Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church. We have served over the last 2 weeks as the host church for the meeting of community leaders in order to mobilize ourselves in the district around this event. I was thinking that this year Metropolitan is celebrating its 175th anniversary. And one of the historic pieces that we have and we display is the freedom papers of one of our members, who was freed by Abraham Lincoln. And I think she thought at that time she was free. I think that if she had lived 50 years ago, she would have thought at that time she was truly free. And here we are 50 years later. And she would have to declare that she's not yet free. She has no voting rights in the District of Columbia. She would be a witness to a murder of a young boy walking home. She would see the Voting Rights Act virtually nullified. She would understand that the crisis in North Carolina is a setback. She would see the argument in New York City, Doc, where you can stop an individual for no reason and just search them. She would wonder what happened to the freedom Abraham Lincoln gave her over 100 years ago. And so here we are today. You're right, not commemorating and not celebrating, but I hope that the 250,000 people who gather in the District of Columbia on August 24th will gather to once again awaken America that we are not yet free. Not just African Americans, but all across this country, minority groups are struggling for human rights, struggling to live decent lives, struggling for jobs, for decent housing, for decent education. Those human rights that are declared for us not just by the Constitution of the United States of America, but by God Himself. That we are free individuals with certain inalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That we as African Americans, Latino Americans, that we pay our taxes. We are decent, law-abiding citizens, and we demand the right to be free and to be exposed to all of the liberties as every other person in this country. And we believe that this march again will stimulate freedom across the world, that men and women, boys and girls will rise up for human rights. So we're here as a part of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the national cathedral of the denomination, saying we are a part of this march.
I don't know how you can follow those speakers. I would just be remiss if I didn't take this moment to salute those heroes who made 50 years ago possible, those national heroes. I'm thinking here of Frank Smith. I wanted to recognize him, Dr. Walter Fauntleroy, and all those members here and in our congregations who, through courage and heroic effort, made 50 years ago possible. I just want to salute you and thank you for that. My job is just to try and keep up with you, the committee, and the national committee, who keep me busy, to get the word out there to the congregations here in the city on how they can participate and be active in this occasion and use it to mobilize, use it to achieve, use it for the future, and use it to educate those people who may not know and what it took to get us to where we are and where we're going. Most recently, last week, the King Center reached out and asked, could we let freedom ring by having bells ring at our congregations at 3 p.m. on the 28th. So we put that word out to all our local congregations. Please, let's ring our bells to let freedom ring at 3 p.m. on the 28th. We're sending out through all our bulletins, through our sacred communications, through our public communications, all the kind of activities, events that are coming up. Except for all of you here in this room, most folks know you get out of town in Washington in August. So we're fighting that, and we're saying, come on back, come home, be engaged, be here, and just trying to make sure that the word is out there to support this tremendous effort and tremendous opportunity. Again, thank you for keeping us engaged, keeping us educated, and getting us activated on this issue.
I am Louis Anthony. I am the Episcopal Liaison for Public Policy and Legislative Affairs for the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, and I come as a representative of the Board of Bishops to tell this wonderful commission, many of the members that are long friends, that we are on board and we're committed to this charge. First, we're on board because we're the Freedom Church. We were established in 1796. We didn't get thrown out, we walked out because we were tired of being tired. Secondly, you should know that the bishop over this area, which covers the states of Washington, Washington, one day a state, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland, has organized within those areas to make sure that the people in that Episcopal area will come. But more the national denomination, the Board of Bishops, has also gotten full sway behind this, and if all things work as we hope, we will at least give $15,000 to this effort. And we hope that others will do as well. Finally, we have a long history with Martin Luther King, because when he started in Montgomery, our Solomon Say and a whole bunch of other folks that he mentions prominently in his own writings were the crowd that came out from the other crowd. You know, some people show up after the photo op, and then some people only show up for the photo op. But we were on the front end. Finally, Dr. Richardson, we too share as a denomination the importance of this. 50 years ago, somebody warned us about the three monsters that are loose in the country that would keep everybody from being free: racism, militarism, and materialism. Well, they're still loose. Today, the unemployment rate for African Americans is double what it was 50 years ago. Today, persons are incarcerated at godless rates in comparison to 50 years ago. Today, it's still open season on black folks. We don't use trees, we use guns. Today, the Supreme Court has resurrected a line of cases where they, through interpretive nullification, guarantee that even though there are rights in the Constitution, they'll interpret them so narrowly that they don't exist. We both share Frederick Douglass. He was nurtured in our nurseries and shared himself with everybody else. Frederick Douglass said this: "The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress," which is a very nice way of saying folks will stick it to you as long as you put up with it. And so we hope to join you, Dr. Richardson, in this very significant effort to make sure that folks know that we're tired of having it stuck to us and that we intend to do what is necessary so that freedom will ring again.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now this panel is going to exit through those doors there, and we're going to bring up the next panel. And as the next panel comes up, let me just say that my name is Frank Smith. I didn't properly identify myself. I'm the founding director of the African American Civil War Museum. You sit in this museum here today, which is located at 1925 Vermont Avenue Northwest. Our exhibit is called Glorious March to Liberty, Civil War to Civil Rights. It ends with the Civil Rights Movement. And as Reverend Anthony and others have alluded, this Civil Rights Movement changed America, and certainly the March on Washington was the high water mark of the Civil Rights Movement. And it started to bring together, I think, for the first time in the minds of the public, a site so large with so many people that I think people finally realized that maybe we could achieve this freedom here in America. And so we're glad to be a part of this, and hopefully we'll be joined by thousands of people who are coming in here for our program.
Good morning. My name is Bob Ross. I'm president of Prince George's County NAACP. Thanks for inviting us. We have partnered with the D.C. chapter of the National Action Network and the city of D.C. Prince George's County is on the move. We had a meeting last night with the clergy in Prince George's County, and they all are dedicated to come out to the 50th anniversary on the March on Washington. And we will be meeting at the Washington Monument starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then we will proceed around about 8:15 into the main march. I am also the state coordinator for the NAACP for the state of Maryland, and also I'm help coordinate DC, NAACP, as well as Virginia. And we had a commitment of trying to get 100,000 people to the March on Washington. This is very significant. I was 18 years old when I attended the march in 1963, came down with my mother. And we really didn't know as a young person, because we live in a very protective community where we wasn't allowed to cross 63rd Street in Philadelphia. We wasn't allowed to cross Market Street to the west. And then when we rode the trolley, it was a wooden trolley. And I remember asking my mother one time, why do we have to go to the back of the trolley? And she said, shh. And I didn't know. And after I got left home to save boundaries of home and went into the service south, I now understood why they were so protective of us. And as the speakers ahead of us said, we are going backwards in some of our fights. As we look at people being in prison for minimum maximum sentences, we need to work on that. And we support the leadership of this march for what's going on. And NAACP, all 1,600 units in the country, is preparing to come to Washington. So far, we had a count of maybe 900 buses that are coming into the city. So we got a huge effort, but it's not over yet. And we're silent, and we think we got the numbers we need, we're wrong. We have to work ever so hard, right up to the last minute. So for the next 15 or 14 days that we have, we're asking everybody to work 24/7 to make sure to send a message out to the world that we are on the move again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, I'm Imam Mahdi Bray. I'm the National Director of the American Muslim Alliance and President Emeritus of the Coordinating Council of Muslim Organizations. And I certainly want to thank the chairman for inviting us to participate. I was 13 when I came from New Central Baptist Church from Norfolk, Virginia with the youth NAACP. You know, so we still got a lot of work to do. I tell people we got a lot of work to do because I still have to worry about driving while black and flying while Muslim. So we still got a lot of work to do, and so we need to get about the business of the work. Certainly also, I think we got a lot of work to do simply because we see very clearly they're trying to divide us, and they're asking, somebody was saying, well, are you all with the left wing or were you with the right wing? I tell them that we're not with the left wing or the right wing, we want the whole chicken. And so we're working in that direction. So we see that there are a lot of things there. Not only do we have to call forward for the better angels, but we've got to beat back the demons of demagoguery that want to stop us from voting and stop our young people from voting and stopping people of color from voting. We got to stand and make a principled stand. So we're using this activity not just, as you said, to celebrate, but to dedicate ourselves to the fact that we're not going to be divided. We're going to stand together as white, black, Asian, poor, whether we're basically from the rural area or for the urban areas, whether we're Muslim, Christian, or Jew. We're going to all stand together and we're going to raise our voices, speak truth to power. As we said, we're going to lift every voice and sing to every heavy wings with the harmony of liberty. And facing the rising sun, for our new day has begun. We're going to keep on marching until victory is won.
Hello, my name is Paul Sadler. I'm the senior pastor at 12th Street Christian Church, Disciples of Christ. here in Washington, D.C., in the Shaw area, Logan Circle area. We've been here over 100 years, celebrating the work of God in this community. We are very proud and very honored to be part and to take part in this historic event. The principles of our faith dictate to us that we need to be involved in all of humankind, all struggles and all things that don't give us the right to celebrate the freedom given to us by our Almighty God. We want to be part of this movement just to let the world know that we're getting sick and tired of this psychological madness of keeping people separated from one another. Things that are given to us naturally are being exploited, where we're working against ourselves. So we stand in unity with the National Action Network. I want to thank Dr. Frank Smith and Dr. Reginald Green for their historic involvement in the struggle. Some of us who are younger maybe don't realize, what others have gone through to make this happen. So last week we had taken a group of youth from our church, 35, up to New York City. And we really went not only to go to the Apollo Theater, which was more an activity, but we took them to the Chambon Museum. And there they could witness and hear of such intellectual stimulation produced by great black men for the reason of racism in the Western Hemisphere. So we strongly say, on behalf of all who are faithful and believe in the importance of equality, justice, and just fairness of life, that we continue to uphold the principles of truth, that we will fight and we will fight and we will fight until victory is won. So we say thank you very much for having an open heart and an open mind to realize that this thing's just not going to walk away, but we're going to have to help usher it right back to hell from which it came. And we're going to stand in joy as unity in people, as recorded by the psalmist. You remember when he said how wonderful it is when brothers and sisters can live together in unity. I want to get warmed up here, but I'm going to let it go. It's just too good. My mother, who passed away at the wonderful age of 97, said to me one time, and I'll never forget it, she said, there's more good people in this world than bad. So we want to celebrate that all the time. The good people who really care. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brianna Patterson. I'm the Northeast Regional Director for National Action Network's Youth Move. We're basically here today to be a part of the march. I know we have about 2 or 3 buses coming from our Youth Move headquarters office in Atlanta. We have some other buses coming from across the country. We also have the University of the District of Columbia college students, the college that I actually attend, coming to the march as well. We have, college students from Howard University coming to the march, confirmed. And we're just coming to the march to say that we know that those who marched in 1963, they paved the way for us, but we want to continue that fight for justice, because we know that they're killing our generation. They're not, they're killing our generation. They're keeping us back from, being able to vote. I voted for the first time in the 2012 elections, and it made me feel good that I could choose who I wanted to run my country. So I definitely believe that youth being at this march is very, very important, because without youth, it started with youth. I mean, it started in the 1960s with the 4 young men who did the sit-ins in Greensboro, North Carolina. It started with them. So why not let it continue with us as we march with our fellow leaders, our Reverend Al Sharptons, our Reverend Greens, our different forefathers of the civil rights movement. And I definitely believe that Youth Move and all of the other youth that are coming to the march on Washington on August 24th will definitely be loud and present, and let them know that they will no longer be able to kill us and kill our generation, and our generation will forever live on.
Good afternoon, morning. My name is Reverend Terrence McKinley. I am the Director of Ministries and Outreach for Reed Temple AME Church. I have been a member of the DC, Maryland, Virginia area for about 4 months now. Before that, I was the Director of Christian Education at the Greater Allen AME Cathedral in New York. So glad to be a part of what's happening today. There is a theme in our faith that says that we live in a tension between the already and the not yet. What has already been done and what has not yet been done, the benefits of our past and the hope of our future. And I think that that's not only a theme of our faith, but it's also a theme of this march, particularly where this march is situated. We have a lot to celebrate. The strides that those have made before us have led to great opportunity. I'm a beneficiary of that opportunity. I'm only 33 years old, so I was not alive at the time of the march. But we've got a long way to go, and there's a lot for us to do, particularly in the context of some things that are going on now. Stand your ground and stop and frisk are laws that we've got to really look at, and I think that this march draws some attention to that. Gun violence in the African American community. Everything that I know about the civil rights movement, it was not only about challenging those who were in power, it was also about holding our folks to be accountable. And so we not only have to challenge, but we've got to hold folks in our community accountable. And lastly, on the back end of Trayvon Martin and the George Zimmerman ruling, when we're looking at a young man who was profiled based upon the way that he looked, he was part of a generation that did not see King march on Washington. And I think that there's one other thing that we should draw our attention to in this moment, and that is we have to re-articulate this dream to that generation so that they understand that there's still a fight ahead and there's still work for us to do. And so I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this panel. I indeed am looking forward. Our church is looking forward to being engaged however we can. And we are grateful and honored for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Okay, this panel exits that way. We're going to bring up another group. As the panel exits and our next panel is called, let me also just say that this is the second of a series of briefings that the commission is having. On the 20th of August, we will have our last in a series of briefings here. At that time, we're going to focus on the labor unions, the traditional civil rights organizations, the NAACP, the Urban League, SNCC, those organizations that were here in 1963. And so we'll have them reporting on what they are doing at that time. Those of us who witnessed that great march in 1963 know that most of the people who were brought to that march were brought either in organized groups by labor unions or in organized groups by church organizations. And so, or by the traditional civil rights groups, the Urban League and SNCC and NAACP. And so if we get a turnout this time, a large turnout, which I expect to see, that turnout will also be brought to Washington by a great effort on the part of the labor unions, on the part of the traditional civil rights groups, and on the part of the church organizations, many of whom we see are here today. Now we have our third panel of witnesses coming forward to be with us now. I see we're going to start with Bishop Kelsey, who's here and who's going to lead us off, and then we'll pass the mic. But please, each of you identify yourselves and then make your statements. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, thank you, and to all the panel. I'm Bishop Michael Kelsey. I pastor the New Samaritan Baptist Church here in Washington, D.C. I am on the Executive Council for the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International under our presiding bishop, Bishop Paul S. Morton. This march really, I believe, is a destiny moment. History tells us that destiny moments are seldom understood or embraced by those who are in the moment. And the Holy Scriptures teach us that destiny moments are never just about the moment itself. 50 years ago, the historic March on Washington was a destiny moment. It was not understood by some who were in the moment. And there were those then who did not embrace it. As a matter of fact, history tells us that there were those who actively opposed it. Well, 50 years later, we are approaching another destiny moment, a moment where history, destiny, and legacy come together to march again on Washington. And this 50th anniversary march is not just about a moment. It's not confined to a moment, neither is it confined to a march. But instead, it's already been said, it's really about a movement to build the beloved community envisioned by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A movement of justice, a movement of equality, of liberty, really a movement of righteousness. So rather than simply being a commemoration of a march that happened 50 years ago, it is actually a continuation of a movement that pushes through the evils of injustice and relentlessly pursues the destiny of a dream. The faith community believes that this will only happen through the non-violent power of prayer. We believe that prayer is action and that true prayer breeds activism and advocacy. For faith without works is dead. And so we want to really lift up this prayer component of the vision. The National African American Clergy Network, which is a group of clergy from all parts of the country, have been coming together and praying every Tuesday morning for over 5 years. We got started when President Barack Obama was entering in, and we just haven't let up. We pray for the country. We pray for our president and his family. We pray for our elected officials. We pray for our communities and our houses of worship. We pray for the clergy. And that's why we put together a 4-point prayer strategy to be executed before the march, during the march, and after the march. The 4-point strategy is, number one, we have 12 daily devotionals that have been developed to be prayed in homes before the march. Number two, we've developed a prayer walk guide for the Saturday before the march. We are going to march over those grounds. We're going to walk over those grounds before the march, and we're going to pray to the God who's over the grounds with 12 focus areas. Number three, there'll be a strategic intercessory prayer during the march. There are many of our senior citizens who may not be able to make it out to the march. They are strategically going to be in prayer, interceding at their homes around the country, as well as intercessors will be on the grounds during the march itself. And then number four, there'll be continued prayer after the march. There's a prayer and praise celebration service on Saturday, August 31st, after the march at 10 a.m. at the Metropolitan AME Church here in D.C., as well as ongoing prayer and devotions that use the prayer walk guide and the 12 daily devotionals that we've developed. So you see, we're serious about all aspects of the march. God said, if my people, which are called by my name, would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear, God says, from heaven and forgive their sins. So we believe that God is going to move in and through this movement well beyond the march.
Thank you, Bishop Kelsey. We've been asked to amplify. Good morning, all the fathers and mother on the panel. I'm Reverend Kemi Ononuga. I'm glad it's my turn because we certainly weren't here during the civil rights movement of the 60s. And I'll tell you briefly why I say that. We were in Africa. In the trenches also, fighting for civil right on our own turf. Thank you for what you said, Bishop, about when things happen here in America, the ripple effect is felt beyond the borders of America. I'm the chair of the Africa Leadership Congress here in North America. I am the Tri-State Regional Director for the Christian Association of Nigeria, Canaan. I am a pastor at Jesus House, DC, in Silver Spring. And we are the most progressive African church in North America. Why do I say that? We've been able to replicate ourselves over 800 times, which means we have about 800 plus churches in the whole of North America. I'm saying that to say that there is some level of capacity coming alongside this march from the African community. Thank you, sir, for asking me to come and speak, because oftentimes those of us from Africa are pushed aside because people are not yet perhaps aware that Africa has come of age and that we have a voice, and we can now speak and articulate the pain of the things that suffered here that we also suffered. You know, to confirm what you said, Bishop, people like Congressman Ron Dellums, recently Donald Payne, Karen Bass, are still fighting, have fought and are still fighting for the emancipation of Africa severally. We know this is, America is the battleground. So what I want to emphasize, and the reason that we're in partnership with this march, and I'm doing the rounds of the African churches to understand, to be educated, to understand and to support what's going to happen on the 24th of August, because beyond and above the statements that we make here in America, the same statements are being made in Africa and beyond, in Europe, in Asia. We all know what's going on in Egypt, for instance, in Libya, and all of the marches that have mirrored the march of 1963, that's going to mirror the march of 2013, to continue to make legislative statements to emancipate our people, not only here in America, but all over the world. People of color are people of color. I'm an African in America. I call myself a new American. The same issues that the indigenous African Americans face is pertinent to us and our people, and perhaps even worse, because we have to translate what's being said before we can have clear understanding. So 70% of the information is lost in translation because English is not our first language. But in order not to belabor the point, I bring greetings from the African community, and I want to assure you that now that we're here, we will be standing shoulder to shoulder in this march, not only as a gesture of thanks to those who have brought our issues to the forefront before we came, but also to let you know that we will lend our support in numbers, we will lend our support in money, we will lend our support in speaking and articulating causes that's common to all of us, and we will continue to stand with you as we move forward. A lot of what we do in the African community now is pretty much educating them to let them see the parallel lines that connect us, you know, so that your issues have become our issues. There are a few differences in the areas of immigration, because you are fortunate to be here. I remember what the senior pastor of our church, Pastor Gandhi, said a couple of months ago when somebody accosted him and challenged the Africans for selling the brethren to the slave move. He said, well, you know, I wish it was my grandfather that was sold, because at least I wouldn't have to deal with the immigration issues that 90% of our people are dealing with now. because those are dire issues. Those are issues that determine if you stay in America or you have to leave. So those are the reasons one of the reasons why we'll be coming alongside you. Jobs, the emancipation of women, freedom. Thank you for what you said about the women. You're fortunate in America. I mean, I can tell you stories of how women are marginalized continuously in Africa. When I hear women here having PhDs, it's still a long journey in Africa where it's not even believed that women should be educated. How much more get a PhD? So the fight continues, the issues continue, but we are here now, and we will speak for that community as clergy, and we'll continue to pray that the good work that the likes of Ron Dellums, I was fortunate to meet him, and he told me firsthand the way laws were passed that led to the freedom in South Africa, that got Mandela out of prison. We will continue to believe in the movement. We'll continue to learn from you, because the struggle here is a little different from what it is in Africa, and we will continue to partner with you and stand shoulder to shoulder so that we advance the cause of the people of color, because that's what we all are. Thank you.
Grace, mercy, and peace from God our Father, the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. My name is the Reverend Dr. Carl E. Keels. I am the Dean of Maple Springs Baptist Bible College and Seminary, the interim pastor of New Mount Olive Baptist Church, and the pastor of Community Baptist Church. And I am here to represent the Nathans of the world, to let the King know that God is still in control, and that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world, and that no weapon, whether it be guns or sword, no weapon formed against us, whether it be stand your ground, shall prosper. I am here to let all those that think that truth pressed to the ground will not rise again, to let them know that God is still on the throne. And as long as God is on the throne, we have an advocate before our Father, who is Jesus Christ, who will help us. All we have to do, as Bishop Kelsey says, is to call on his name. We thank God for this opportunity, as the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King did, to call on God to elicit his help when the Bull Connors faced him down with dogs and guns. He got down on his knees and he prayed to an almighty God that is able to do all things but fail. We are here to remind everyone that the civil rights struggle is a religious struggle, is a struggle against God's people, and that we have an advocate, we have a partner, that we stand with God. And I'd rather stand with God against the world than to stand with the world against God. And so we just want to let you know and encourage you to know that this is a theological movement. This is not a civic movement, but it is a theological movement. This is good versus evil. And we have come to let you know that if you stand on God's side, you will be a winner. May God bless you.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Bowen. I'm the Minister of Fellowship, Social Justice, and Community Outreach at the Shiloh Baptist Church here in Washington, D.C. I bring you greetings on behalf of our Senior Minister, the Reverend Dr. Wallace Charles Smith. Reverend Braxton, seated there in the front row, said just a while ago that Metropolitan AME, which is the mother of all black churches here in the nation's capital, is celebrating 175 years. And we at Shiloh are celebrating 150 years. And I just want to bring to your attention that the social justice ministry, which I head up at Shiloh, didn't begin in 2012. Social justice didn't begin in Metropolitan AME in 2012. They've been on the battlefield for quite some time. The NAACP was not founded in 2012. Neither was the National Action Network or the National Urban League. We've been around for quite some time, and the reason we've been around is because we've always been the first responders when it comes to injustice in our country and in our nation, giving a clarion call and raising our voice. And so we're looking forward to the march on the 24th because someone along the line has gotten it twisted. Perhaps I'm reminded of someone who stepped out on an army or military vehicle and before national cameras announced that a war was over. That was a premature victory. And we have pronounced, I think, premature victories when it comes for our struggle for justice and equality. But along with that, there's some premature eulogies. There are those who think that the black church is all caught up in name it and claim it. They believe that our voices have gone silent and that truly we are enjoying the fruits of our labors. But the devil is a liar. We've been marching on the battlefield for quite some time. I'm looking at one of our members, Shirley Washington, who's sitting there in the audience as well. And she gives me inspiration for during the last election campaign. She made her own signs, didn't need a committee, didn't need a budget, and went out to the metro stops all over the DC metro area and registered people to vote using her God-given time. And she had the audacity to look individuals in their eyes, those who she knew perhaps were embarrassed that they had been incarcerated, and let them know that they could regain their right to vote again. She's my inspiration. We've got work to do. And we're coming to say that just like you can walk and chew gum at the same time, well, you can pray and vote at the same time. We've come to tell people that now is not the time to give up. There are some folks saying, well, how long y'all gonna march? Well, I hear James Weldon Johnson saying, let us march on till victory is won. But we are not marching because we love to march. I'm sure there's some intrinsic value in marching, but that's not why we're marching. We're marching because Ella Baker said that those of us who love freedom cannot rest until it comes. So we're gonna march on, we're gonna pray on, and we're gonna fight on until last we have the victory.
Excellent. Good morning. My name is Reverend MacArthur Flournoy, and I serve as the Director of Faith Partnerships and Mobilization for the Human Rights Campaign. The Human Rights Campaign is the nation's largest lesbian, gay, bisexual civil rights organization with a budget of $40 million, and we are committed to justice and equality for all. For us, all means all. We salute the leadership of Reverend Al Sharpton and the other visionary leaders, because we understand something, that we all don't have to have the same mind to mind the same things. We understand that it's more important that we come together, and most importantly, we see this as a homecoming. We understand that there was a man 50 years ago that planned the March on Washington, Bayard Rustin. He was the architect of the March on Washington. But when it came time for visibility, he was asked to step back because of his sexual orientation. But as my 10-year-old would say when he wants to convince me of something, he says, Daddy, I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen it with my, and you cannot convince Cornell that something doesn't exist when he's seen it with his own eyes. And I have traveled this country, and I have heard it and seen it with my own eyes, that there has been a change in this nation where we as people of faith have said, come home. All means all. That God is for all, and that we are all made in the likeness and the image of God. And for us, that's what this march is about. We believe in marching, but rest assured that we're not tricked. We believe in strategizing at the Human Rights Campaign. We believe in changing federal legislation, and we know how to get it done, and we're committed to working with everyone to get it done. We also have seen court documents that said that we're going to drive a wedge between gay folks and the black church, the National Organization on Marriage, and we're going to fund strategies to keep in place this wedge. Why? To keep us from working together and joining together to address issues like Stand Your Ground laws, Voters' Rights Act, search and frisk. These are the issues that concern us. As the father of 5, those are the issues that I'm concerned about. Of 4 sons and a daughter. Who will take care of my sons? If I don't stand up at this moment, who will? Yes, I believe in LGBT equality, but I also believe in racial justice and social justice. And we will not rest until we get it done. We consider it an honor and a privilege as a human rights campaign to stand with the National Action Network and all these tremendous, amazing faith leaders. We're clear that we all don't think the same thing, but I'm also clear that we can attend to the same thing and we can get this done. Come on. We stand ready to join you. We're your brothers and we're your sisters. This is our homecoming. We believe that all means all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, as this panel exits the stage, let me see if there are any other ministers in the audience who have not spoken, who would wish to come forward to talk to us today about what you're doing in your church to help support the March on Washington on the 24th of August. If there are no other ministers in the audience, I'm going to see if the panel has any closing comments. Before I call on the panel, however, for their closing comments, let me just say one thing about what our program is here at the African American Civil War Museum. We will be marching in this parade. You all know that we have women who wear costumes, period dress, who take on characters from the Civil War era. And they will be out there in their uniforms, in their period dress. And we have a group of young men who work with us, who also dress in Civil War attire, to talk about our freedom. And we'll have our group dressed in those uniforms, and you'll see them as part of this march. And then we will also have, in my own personal case, I've told you this before, I'm a daddy and a granddaddy, and I got 9 grandchildren. 3 of them are going to be here, and those 3 are going to have to march for the other 6 who can't come. But they got if Granddaddy can march, they can march. And so they're going to be out here marching with Granddaddy. And I want to challenge all the grandparents in this audience, not just to show up yourself, but bring your children. I was here for the March on Washington in 1963. I can't believe how many people who say to me, if I had been here, I would have marched. Well, if you don't march in August of 2013, you're gonna ask yourself that same question. Let me also say one other thing to you. I was in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. I was a young student at Morehouse College when I got arrested the first time, and then went to Mississippi later on. And when you're out in these lonely places, threatened by the sheriff, going in and out of these jails, it's frightening. Reverend Green himself was a freedom rider. Spent time in penitentiary in Mississippi. When you're out there on those freedom discussions in these jails, you get to spend a lot of time together, to learn a lot about each other. And one of the things that we used to talk about was, if we weren't here doing this, how would we be able to justify to our grandchildren later on why we didn't do something? Well, all those people were marching, all those people were going to jail, all those people were taking the tear gas. Where were you, Granddaddy? What were you doing? Well, my feet were hurting. And I didn't have any money. All kinds of excuses, and we hear that now. I don't know about you all. I hear this right now. When I talk to people about marching on August the 27th, I have heard every excuse known to man. So some of us are going to have to march for those people who just can't do it. You know what they say in the military, Reverend Sadler, they say, I don't care how much you train a soldier, sometimes they just can't do it. When that first shot is fired, we have a rifle around here at this museum that belongs to a soldier who was in the Battle of Gettysburg. And the way the family told me this story, they said the first sign of gunfire, he just passed out, fainted. They thought he was dead. So when they go on the battlefield after on the white flag of surrender, they take him into the hospital. He doesn't have any wounds, no knife wounds, no gun wounds. Nobody hit him in the head with a brick. He just fainted at the first sign of gunfire. Some people just can't do it, y'all. So we have to do it for those people who can't do it. We have to do it for those people who can't do it. And that's really my charge. I think because it has to be done. The March on Washington changed America for the good. It was a pivotal change in this country, and we have to keep on marching until we win this war. And so that's my charge to the audience, and I hope you will join us. Many of these churches have talked about what they're doing. I know that they are organizing within their own congregations. Some of them are going to march under their own banners, which I hope they will do, so the world will see that your church is out there. And if all your members can't come, some of them are too old, some of them too young, some of them too tired, the ones who can have to represent those people who can't get there. We all know that. But we got to get this job done. Now I'm going to turn to my colleagues. I'm going to start with Reverend Green to see if they have any closing comments, and then we're going to close this out.
Only to say I've been impressed with many of the comments that have been made. I was deeply honored. I want to make this point to see my fellow alum from Virginia Union, Brother Richardson, who works with the National Action Network, to be here today. I was enormously surprised to see him. But it makes me know that Virginia Union as well has a legacy of involvement, because it was at Virginia Union when I decided, 3 of us, to go on the Freedom Rides, and ended up in Mississippi, Hinds County, and of course Parchment Penitentiary, where I spent almost 6 weeks in jail before I returned to school. So I'm enormously impressed that even at this juncture in time, that there is still the legacy of many who marched. Some of us who are still around, as I was, who marched, who were part of the March on Washington in '63. And many of us here around still to tell the story to the youth in terms of them finding something they feel passionate about, that they can give their life and their commitment to. That's what this is all about, to make a world better for our young people, for our youth, and for those who still sort of bearing their burdens, as we used to say, in the heat of the day. God bless you. I look forward to a wonderful celebration and commemoration and a moving towards a better life for all of us in America on the 24th and, of course, the 28th as well.
I want to thank Chairman Smith and Green and all present. Let me say, I shared last time that Reverend Clay Evans, my pastor out of Chicago, invited the Dreamer to our church. I was young at the time, and I remember all the people crowding for blocks down the street. But I was old enough to have my earlobe tuned in to the voice of Dr. King. I could only dream at that time because there was something intrinsic within me. Knew that the visits to Mississippi, Indianola, Mississippi, going to outhouses and watching snuff spit was not enough for my generation. Ever since Dr. King marched and fought for us, I've carried a bit of him inside of me. But it wasn't about the man, it was about the God in the man. And I want to encourage all of you, if it helps you build your psyche, because we've got psychic issues. The reason people mistreat you is because they got a psychological problem. The reason people treat you is because of maladjustment of their temperament, and they don't know how to be good. But those of us who were brought in the immersion of a social time where we saw God bring dreams to life, we have a responsibility. I want to encourage you in your church, as we will do, put on Dr. King's speech. There's some grandmama in them who knows what it means. Talk about social justice. Talk about the price others pay. Have the choir sing those Negro spirituals. Listen to Mahalia Jackson. Rise up on the inside so we can get ready to march. And I want to encourage you to bring 10 folk with you. And if your shoes have not been conditioned for marching, get some marching shoes. Because we've got to come up from the nightmare of dreams that this society has put up on us and let people know that God knows how to reveal and interpret dreams of our time. I believe God is speaking for such a time as this. I'm going to be in the movement. I'm going to look for every preacher. I'm going to still call you. I'm going to still bug you. Because to be absent is to be in a malaise and in a deep sleep. We got to wake up and march. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for this opportunity. Come on, y'all, let's march.
I'm often amazed at the fact that Harriet Tubman got free. She got delivered and went to Canada. Took a lot of us with her. But what stuns me about Harriet Tubman is that she came back to get more. That blows my mind. Because when some of us get free, academically free, we graduate from Morehouse, we don't look back. When we get economically free, you'll be living in the suburbs, like the Martin family, we don't look back. But Harriet came back, and you could tell that the Spirit of God was on her, because that's the only way. There had to be some supernatural intervention for her to go back and forth from freedom to bondage, and to have the kind of impediments that she had. And sometimes I think, as the leader of the DC chapter of National Action Network, I probably need to carry a pistol and say to some black folk, I'm not leaving you here. You can't turn back. I'm going to end your experience right here if you plan to turn back. Because that's what Harriet did. Because they were more dangerous alive than dead. And we have to make sure that we work together to make this march happen, and there's a vision after the march. Reverend Sharpton and Martin King III are clear that this is not the end, this is the beginning. This is not an end, it's the means to something. And Reverend Sharpton is clear about the legislative terminus of our work. There's no freedom march or freedom rights kind of activity that has any meaning except it ends in legislation. So we've got to give our president a new Congress. He's not going to get anything done unless we come out and mobilize like we did for the presidential election. We need to mobilize for our local and primary elections to make sure that the president has a new Congress. I'm hoping that we will use this march as a step towards that. I want to say finally that Dr. Richardson, here in DC, it took us years to get a DC chapter of National Action Network started. It took us many years. And now that I'm the president, I understand why. Because in this city, relationships is everything. Relationships in Washington, D.C. is more important than money. And so I have taken upon myself the arduous task of building relationships with people who don't believe the way I believe, who don't worship on the same day that I worship, and probably we didn't have the same experience growing up. Dr. Frank Smith is a prime example of that. When Dr. Smith comes to our National Action Network clergy leadership meetings, even though I'm sitting in the chair, he takes over. And because he is an icon, we let him. Dr. Coleman is an icon in this city. He and I have a strong working relationship because we are going to get all clergy in the DMV area. I'll get half, and Dr. Coleman will get the other half. And so we work together for that purpose. Frank Smith has the mayor's authority to do some of the things that he does. And so we at National Action Network, the DC chapter, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We work with him, and we get some of the benefits that they already have and some of the authority. The African mother who spoke here is a personal friend of mine, and I've been begging and pleading and asking her to come and get involved. And so she's here today, and she was here last week, and she's getting more involved. So the African community is with us. Dr. Braxton heads the big church in this city. And he said to me, Reverend Abrigo, I don't like to be targeted, because I told him that we targeted him. We couldn't get what National Action Network DC chapter is doing in DC without his help. And he has just opened the doors. I'm shocked at the kind of help that he is. He went on vacation and left his church to our disposal. So what we're doing as National Action Network here in DC is building partnerships, building relationships. Brother Flournoy, who is a pastor and a close friend of mine, is a member of the LGBT community. I am not a member of the LGBT community, but I will fight for his human rights and for his civil rights. Now, there's some rights that he wants that I am not yet there. I'm not there yet. But as far as his human rights and his civil rights are concerned, I'll give my life for his human rights and civil rights. His right to own property, his right to have employment, his right to have health care. So we are building relationships, Dr. Richardson, here as the DC chapter, and most of what is happening here today, along with Dr. Smith, is a part of our collaboration together. And so I want you to know that Reverend Sharpton has a clear vision, Martin King III has a clear vision, and we need to put down our disagreements and let's work together and move this forward.
Thank you very much. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. And on behalf of the women, I'd just like to say that we understand years ago, before and during the civil rights movement, that people had reverend before their names before they had doctor. And I'm blessed to have a reverend and 3 doctors before my name. But I still feel that we have to say what Reverend Flournoy said, is that all means all. Women will be at the march. We may be a little tired. Our feet may be tired, as Fannie Lou said, but our souls will be rested in knowing that we have brought out as many of our sisters and our brothers as we possibly could, and we won't rest until we do that. We may not have been heard in 1963, but women will be there. We will be seen, we will be heard, and we will be effective long after the march is over. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you all very much. Our next program is scheduled for August the 20th. As I said earlier, we'll be focused on the labor unions, traditional civil rights organizations, the NAACP, the Urban League, and we will also have a report from our various committees at that time. Let me also just as a say that on the day of the march, on the 24th, after we finish marching and we finish downtown, we are going to have an official closing ceremony here at this museum. We're putting a tent up on our parking lot back there. We're going to have some food and some music, and we're going to have 2 plays on the stage here. One about Harriet Tubman, and the other one about a famous person whose name I can't remember right now. But I want to invite you all to come back. If you march, you can come and eat and be with us for free. If you don't march, you're going to have to pay to get in. I'll tell you that right now. But if you march and your feet are tired, I want you to come back and rest your souls here with us at the African American Civil War Museum, 1925 Vermont Avenue. Thank you very much.